On today's show, which team is under more pressure between the Rockets and Warriors as the series shifts out to the Bay Area? What are the expectations for Game 3 of this series, and how do the Rockets steal at least one game while they're out on the West Coast? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also, check out our Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate all of that support. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And joining us now is a very special guest, one of the voices of your Houston Rockets, the man himself, Ryan Hollins. Ryan, what's up, man? Happy to have you back on the program. Series split 1-1, not quite how we'd want things to be, shifting back to the Bay Area, but coming off a win, things feeling pretty good after that Game 2 dub.
Yeah, no, man, you have to be feeling great because, you know, we talked about it, Jackson, depth and physicality and excitement against experience. And again, Golden State had the experience, but they don't have the depth. And you saw that play out in Game 2. And you have to understand this. Jackson, for the Golden State Warriors internally, they had been at war just to get to this spot. They couldn't sit their guys. They couldn't rest. You know, normally when you have high seeding, prior, you could rest guys in and out. You can get them breaks. They had to play all the way through. So I think what you've seen is a lot of the aches and pains kind of playing out through the Warriors. And for the youth of the Rockets, they're getting better. They're getting stronger. They were almost too excited to play in that position.
Well, I'll tell you what, who's going to have some aches and pains is definitely going to be Jimmy Butler, depending on what his status is for the rest of this series. We know the Warriors have officially listed him as questionable for ahead of Game 3. We're going to talk about him and whether he plays or not a little bit later in the show. But I want to ask you just right off the jump, kind of for you, what kind of felt like the main difference between Game 1 and Game 2 for this series?
The spacing was so much better. They got the chance to sit there and watch film. And what happens, Jackson, is we have guys who can affect the game without scoring a point. Now, the problem is when you have three of them on the court at the same time, the spacing got horrible. And sometimes you have to be patient, take a deep breath, and just do your job. So, for instance, Tari Eason, he hit 2 or 3 threes in the game? Tari Eason was so excited, he probably didn't want to shoot the basketball in Game 1. So he just said, let me just crash the boards, hit somebody, throw a body, find a way to impact the game. But Tari and Jabari and Amin did a good job sitting in their spots. And respectively, right now, Amin is the only one with the green light to play in the dunker and crash every time. Those other guys should be spacing because when the help comes, you're hitting an open man. And one thing Houston made a real concerted effort was to hit the open man and trust those shots and then hit the boards afterwards. But guys got so excited. They didn't want to shoot the ball. They want to crash in. They want to get layups. They want to make those energy plays. But again, seeing those things settle down, you can see they watched film, particularly for Jalen Green. He realized they're pressuring high and sending me to my left hand. And then they're helping, converging in. He got behind the defense. He hit him in Thompson, Jackson, right? Those two plays inside, they just opened things up for him. So for him slowing down, letting the game come to him, and now the defender's going, dang, do we want to step up? Because now Jalen Green facilitating and passing is much different than the way he played in Game 1.
Spacing was definitely one of those big topics of discussion, amongst the players and Coach Udoka talking about it between game 1 and game 2. And it definitely felt like they were able to clean a lot of that up in game 2 in particular. And kind of that one of those lineups, we saw in game 1, right, is that you got the Terror Twins and the Jumbo lineup out there at the same time. And unfortunately, that lineup has 3 non-shooters in it. You got Amin, you got Alp, you got Steven Adams, and those guys are all individually great at some of the things they do. And that lineup did some work in the regular season, but in the playoffs, especially against this Warriors team, it kind of felt like it got a little exposed from a spacing perspective there in game 1. We didn't see much of it, if at all, I don't think, in game 2 of that specific 5-man lineup out there on the court. So Ime kind of adjusting, getting away from that, making sure that the guys had the space to operate, right? Driving lanes for Jalen, driving lanes for Amin, space for Alp to operate in the middle of the floor. That definitely felt really much improved there in game 2. Full agreement with you on that one. Now, I want to say, kind of, as we're looking at where things stand right now, right? So Rockets dropped game 1, Warriors maybe take them a little bit by surprise, right? Jalen talked after the game, lights were a little bright and everything. As it's shifting back to the Bay Area now for games 3 and 4, who do you think, which team is under more pressure as this series is going out towards the West Coast? Is it the Rockets or is it the Warriors?
It's the Warriors. The reason the Warriors are under more pressure is because you're praying for these guys to be healthy. You got a punching chance every time you have Steph Curry on the floor, but you got to have Jimmy Butler. This team is not as deep as they were before. They got a legit second closer, a guy who's been a 1A in the NBA Finals at the highest stages in Jimmy Butler. But if you don't have Jimmy Butler at the highest level, it hurts you. So there's a lot of question marks. And I know there's a lot more Warriors banged up than Jimmy Butler. I know Draymond is feeling it. He's having to go to war. Jimmy is feeling it. Hey, again, the focus is to make Steph not just have to, work for all his buckets. Rockets are really trying to make him have to defend and fight through screens and do a lot of those things. So ultimately, at the end of the day, they've been really licking their wounds even before they've gotten into this series. And, fortunately, they won that game against the Grizzlies, but that put a dent in what was going on for the Golden State Warriors. So I think for them, they definitely have enough, but the pressure comes because they don't know where the health is. And then, Jackson, you get to this space, you're sitting down with the coaching staff, the training staff, and you're saying, all right, we got one. Do we sit Jimmy in game 3, let him rest up for game 4? Or do we play him in game 3, and do we risk losing the series because he wasn't ready to go and he gets banged up anymore? He might be out for good. And then you got to fight against the fact, let me tell you something. If I know anything about Jimmy Butler, if he can walk, talk, and chew bubble gum, he's going to try to be on that basketball floor, right? He's a dog. We love that. And all due respect, man, we love some Jimmy Butler. We love what Draymond brings to the table, but it's war now when you see those guys, ultimately in the playoffs. But they're going to look to put their best foot forward. And, from the Rockets standpoint, and this is, in my opinion, game 1 was definitely not a complete loss because Houston won the physicality, and they felt our guys, and they felt them again in game 2. And in game 3, win, lose, or draw, you got to be seeing bodies hit the floor.
Coming up, what's impressed us most about the signature games from Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green so far, and how do the Rockets try to game plan when they don't know if Jimmy Butler is going to be available or not in this series? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment costs, it can be really easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized embarrassingly just how much money I was spending on food, just fast food, food delivery, all of it. Now I budget smarter and save more. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Ryan, you kind of touched on it a moment there, in segment one, but how difficult is it, especially in the playoffs, right? It's one thing in the regular season, guys, game time decision, questionable, whatever, star player may or may not play, but how difficult is it trying to game plan for a team when you don't know if their star player is going to be out there? Like, in your experience, do the game plans shift dramatically? Do you try to kind of keep a similar game plan? How does that work?
One thing when I played, we would go through both scenarios. And, coach would just put in your mind in a questionable situation like this, Jimmy Butler's playing. He's going to be on the floor. Prepare for him. If not, you'd imagine that Jonathan Kuminga would get that role. So you'd see film on both those guys. And the one thing is you rely on is that likely, this is what's tough. They might play better without Jimmy because you may get with all due respect, not that they can win without Jimmy, but in the moment they could play better. Why? Because the ball might start moving and popping. Give some respect to Spencer. He was fiery. He got a towel on his face, but he had like 8 points in 9 minutes in the first half. But I thought a couple of the reserves for the Golden State, they kind of knew their role. They came in, they played extremely hard. They spaced the floor. Their big fella hit some threes in the second half. So there's some things that the Warriors role players as a group can kind of look back to and say, hey, we can do this. We can be a little better. And one thing you also saw, and Houston's got to be aware of this, is, hey, we're jumping on Steph and we're closing out the shooters. And we got to stay really disciplined in that, because Post ends up hitting 2 or 3 threes. He was off, in the first game, but he started to kind of find his stroke. That could change things. And Moody, hit a shot or two. He gets hot. So, Houston's going to try to pick you apart with those other guys, and they play up to par. This is not just a cakewalk if Jimmy Butler doesn't play, but if he does play, Draymond's out there. Those guys are out there. Make sure they feel you. So you're going to have to look for both. And I think the best part, Jackson, is that Coach Ime is going to see how do they play without Jimmy. You got a really good sample size in the second half of that you can kind of game plan for, because it looks like get 2 to the ball with Steph. They run Sengun into an action where they're blitzing him. Okay, they've accepted that. And then now we got to run the shooters off the line and scramble. And what Kerr does a lot of, he'll roll Gary Payton the second and kind of have him be a secondary playmaker. Or, he's kind of like, he'll just pass it and they move it around the perimeter. And then Post, you got your big fella out there spacing, man. He might be, he's one of their better shooters right now. Be straight up, So you got a sample size of both, and you'll do both those things in a walkthrough.
Man, I'll tell you what, I was losing it there watching Post knock those threes down, because there is one thing that guy does on the basketball floor, and that's shoot the ball. You could put a statue next to him, and the statue could guard him effectively. You just got to keep a body near him, and he won't get those shots up. But you give credit to the Warriors offense. They were setting some flare screens for him, trying to open him up a little bit, and he did get going there in game 2. He's definitely a guy that, as a stretch 5, as a spacing big, kind of worries me a little bit. We've seen the Rockets.
I like him, man. Yeah, I like him. And after the series, I'll like him more. Not now, but study. Dude, I can't remember since Andrew Bogut that they've actually played with a 7-footer, and he's taken some minutes away from Kevon Looney because they need more scoring. Where normally Looney, when they need the defense, you see more of them. So, I'm intrigued to see what they do there. But he's their only chance to kind of get some size on the floor, because and credit the double big. Jackson, we talked about this. The double big is forcing Quentin Post to be on the floor a lot more, instead of just going Kuminga, Moody, and Gary Payton, the second. They got to keep Post on the floor more. So you're forcing that young fella into minutes that he's adjusting to on the fly. So he's played well, but hey, right, Jackson, he's as young as our guys. He's as young as our guys.
They got a handful of youngsters over there on that roster. That's kind of the crazy thing, is, right, you've got like the veterans, at the top, but then outside of that, there's a bunch of, younger guys, right? Kuminga's younger, Post is younger, Moody's still on the younger end, and so they're not I don't think they're as experienced as some people would have you believe, right? Yes, they've clearly got the experience with their top dogs, with Jimmy, with Steph, with Draymond, that have been in there, Looney as well. Kerr's got the experience, but then kind of the rest of their roster is a little bit on the more unproven side of things. And I think that was definitely a factor coming into this series.
I'll throw this out to you. Pajimski's going to be better. He probably had a bit of a sour stomach. He'll be better. That was a big impact. Whatever happened with him, hopefully he's better after the series. But right now, you assume that he's going to be better. But here's the deal, too. Like, they're kind of playing against each other too, because Kerr don't trust his young guys. Like he gives them spot minutes, but like he'd rather err on the side of giving Jimmy 40 and Steph 35 and Draymond 35.
It's been a talking point all season long, right? That Kerr hasn't really empowered or trusted a lot of the young guys. Right now, he's given Brandon Pajinski a lot of leash, and he's gone back to Moses Moody after getting Jimmy Butler in the rotation. But he's kind of been all over the place with some of the young guys throughout the last couple years. Really,
let's hope that their internal struggles end up being more of a story, and we just focus on being the best versions of ourselves, and you let those teams have their drama. That's a focus. Like you play hard, you be consistent, you be physical, and defend. Holding them under 100 points, on the Steph Curry team under 100 points is spectacular. You defend, you do those things, you let the doubt set in, and you let and this could be something, they lose this series, and that's what we're looking to. Let that, whatever's going on with Kuminga, whatever that deal is, let that deal blow up. You go out in game 3 and you start smacking those boys around, and you stay physical and you stay true to who you are and what you bring to the table. That frustration will set in. Like when you're a good team and you work and you really know like your culture and who you are, and that's what Ime's building, they're gonna be like, Kuminga, you can't play against them boys. And Kuminga's going, I'm good enough, right? And he's like, well, I want you to box out because Tari Eason's hitting the boards on you. And you sneak in and get a couple rebounds behind his back, or, he misses to swing the basketball to a guy or something. Let them implode internally, but you handle your business, and those things go there, and you want doubt. What you want is doubt to set in with Golden State, because this ain't the same crew that could just roll out and knew what time it was in the game 7. You could close your eyes. Kerr didn't even have to write nothing on the board. Them boys used to know what to do in the game 7. Now he's finding out who can I trust to step up to the table and give me what I need.
Speaking of frustrations, how do you think the Rockets are kind of handling Draymond Green so far, especially the younger Rockets? How do you think they're, so far through 2 games of dealing with kind of everything that Draymond Green brings to you in a playoff series?
Let's not call it let's address the elephant. We were worried about Alp, and those first 2 possessions of game 1 showed us if there was anything more important. Jalen, I love you, but we needed the big fella to show up. And he still got to show up. And I'm going to send a disclaimer to our young fellas right now. Whatever you saw in game 1 or game 2, on the road is a different beast. It's a different animal. So y'all got to wake up again and be prepared to go in that situation, because whatever you saw here is going to be different in there. And the difference, from when I played and you get into playoff environments, this is why home and road is so important. It's not the stars. It's the role players get better. The Moody's get better. Draymond gets better. The complementary pieces. Steph was going to be Steph. If Houston, the way he was on fire, if Houston didn't play Steph as disciplined as they did, he would have had 50 or 60. They're like, what do you mean you did a good job? He had 30. They did a good job and he had 30. That's how good he is. You got to pick your poison. You got to take away 3. He got the floater, right? But the challenge is those role players, and the biggest positive sign that we saw is that Sengun was attacking Draymond. During the season, he would see Draymond, and he'd go into the flamingo, right? As Craig says. He'd just shoot the jumper. And we're like, man, put pressure on him. And it's tough because every time, LP, please face him up when you can. The reason why, when you drive him, you go to drop that shoulder, Draymond's just doing this. That's illegal. You can't put 2 hands in the guy's back. But for some reason, he's able to put 2 hands in the guy's back and no one say anything. So LP goes to drive 2 hands in the back and he stands him up. LP's like, what the heck is this? So if you face him up and you go, he goes two hands, they're gonna have to call that foul. But as long as he attacks him, he allows Coach Udoka to scheme off him. He's the only player that Houston has, unless Jalen Green's on the heater, that requires a double team that naturally draws help. And what does help create, Jackson? It creates action. He's our catalyst. He creates action. You get in the pick and roll, you hit him. If they don't step up, he throws it up. You step up, he throwing it to a man. You got to go get him early. So as long as he can attack Draymond, and Draymond, is going to get those antics or whatever he's going to be doing. And to me, honestly, know that that's a sign of respect. LP, he thinks you're that damn good. That's why he does that to you. We have a great shot, and I love that the Rockets are collectively meeting his physicality, but not going overboard. If that makes sense, like meeting his physicality, because it's like LP, you're not on your own. So when I played with alongside Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett, Chris Paul, and those guys, I knew they were focused on scoring and doing their job. I knew the other team might have a goon that would go after them and guard them. So them going after Draymond or meeting them or having a encounter loosens up LP. But if he can just center in on LP, that may not be in the best odds. So you have to protect your stars. Draymond does what you can't really touch Steph. He protects Steph. If you go to guard him, he goes and sets a screen. He boxes you out. He does all those things to protect Steph. So we got to protect LP, protect our big fella. And that's a lot of what Steven Adams does, because they can't just key in when you see that double big lineup. That's why we all get excited. If we don't know why, that's why, because we're protecting our stars. Steven Adams, he protects a lot of people, and that's what that role is for the guys. So I love what Tari has brought to the table. I don't know. I mean, the towel should be pretty harmless, right? He got a tech, unsportsmanlike. That's what we assume that's it. And
no.
man and those guys, right?
That was a hostile act, Ryan. Are you kidding me? That was vicious. Children were watching. How dare he throw a towel
and
at
it got
Spencer?
stuck for a second too, right? It went like that.
That towel
what are you
perfectly
doing?
wrapped itself around his head. I lost it when that happened.
And it's like playoff basketball, right? I'm like, we'll bring it to the table. I don't know, but those
Man.
plays are good. Like, so here's the thing, like we talk about, get up to line and stay. Just get up to line and be there, and like it's almost like our guys are meeting Draymond with a double push. All right, you're going to push, whatever. It's like it's just part of the game. So I love it. It's been good, but again, what you do is you free those guys up, and it allows Jalen Green to be free, and he got much more free with the things that are going on, and you have trust. You going, man. I know he got my back, so I can be the best version of myself. I'm not out here alone, and that's a lot of what Steven and Tari and Dillon and the men are bringing to the table.
I do want to ask you kind of about Jalen's breakout performance there in game 2, as well as kind of, expectations for game 3 and what the key is to come away with at least one win from the Bay Area when the series shifts back to Houston for game 5. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Ryan, we saw Jalen, right? He, struggled game 1. That kind of was reminiscent of some of the struggles that he's had in the past against this Warriors team. And then it's just like a whole new world opened up for him in game 2. The reads that he was kind of missing there previously started happening, right? We talked about the passes to a man off the baseline, playing out of the dunker, cutting in from the corners. He got some good feeds to Sengun. He was excellent from a facilitating standpoint, and then he really locked in defensively. We saw him diving on the ground, fighting after loose balls with Steph Curry after getting the poke check on him and stuff. Happened multiple times. And then on top of all that, right, the insane offensive burst, right, hitting 8 threes, really, looking a lot more comfortable offensively. What did you like the most about Jalen's game 2 kind of bounce back?
I like that he watched film and he trusted the coaching staff. After some games, you can just get in your feelings and say, it wasn't me, it was them, or they didn't pass me. It can be somebody else's fault. Jalen Green stepped in and saw the way that he could be better. And it's so beautiful when you see a player give himself to the game of basketball. Now, what I know Coach Udoka is going to be telling him is that whatever you saw from game 2 or whatever you liked from game 2, expect something different in game 3. You may see a different defender on you. You may see different coverages. They may come out and just be like, we're sagging off. Jalen Green shoot a contested three. Do all the dancing, shoot contested threes. And you might not see the ball go through the hoop. Or they may shoot a double team at him. They may get really, really physical with him. I know he still didn't accept the trap one time. He did a great job starting the game by passing. He kind of got rolling. They blitzed him off the pick and roll. He tried to beat the double. Man, trust that slip, because as a big guy, as a guy who has to double team, you hit that slip a couple times, I'm less likely to jump out because coach is cussing at me that I'm not getting back and helping quick enough. He's gonna be letting me have it. So ultimately, know you're gonna see something different. Be willing to adjust on the fly. It could have more of that game one physicality, or because all the noise, they may want to go out and clean it up. All the Steph fanatics are Draymond fanatics out of nowhere complaining that the game was too physical. They're just mad that they lost. Okay, just don't be a sore loser. Okay, so for him, adjust to those things. Know that the game is going to be different. Trust in the offense, and trust his moments. And one of the biggest things that stood out for me, Jackson, and I think Jalen was still working. Like, am I over this slump? Have I figured it out? Udoka went out of his way, and it could have cost the Rockets later in the game. He ends up winning the challenge, but that challenge for Jalen Green driving to the basket, for me, what I saw is that Coach Udoka is saying, Jalen, I got your back. And those are plays that Jackson, we see the referees let go so much with him during the season when he drives and he gets hit and all that, and it's like, Somo, you're just not strong enough, whatever it may be. But that challenge said, Jalen, I got you. I believe in you. We need you. And Jalen delivered on through, so he's got to believe he's the baddest man in the planet. It may be more facilitating, more passing, more accepting traps than scoring, and be prepared and be ready. And if you don't feel like your dribble's there, throw and go. Hey, you go set a screen. He can get in a 51 action with Alp or 52 action. I haven't seen that before. So, just be a basketball player, learn from it, and be prepared for whatever. And when we go into games, the more experience that you got, you'd be prepared of that the adjustments really quick of how physical the game is going to be, or how tightly it's going to be called. So Jalen's got to be prepared for that. But if I'm Kerr, possibly a different defender, possibly backing up and just letting him shoot, see if he makes one or two, or possibly going and getting real aggressive or getting the ball out of his hands, once he touches it, because Houston can lack shooting, or we don't necessarily, destroy double teams. And I believe when you get double teamed, you have to destroy double teams at times and give those teams confidence. So you got to accept them, you got to destroy them, you got to be prepared. But Jalen Green is getting that encouragement definitely from the coaching staff right now. And I love that he leaned on them after game one instead of, making excuses. That kid took it on the chin. I love Jalen Green for that. And he's going to have an unbelievable future.
Yeah, his transparency, when he talked to us, in the media after game two, kind of talking about, the lights being a little bright, court being big, all that. It was really refreshing, because sometimes you don't get that kind of, honesty from players about when they do struggle. And so that was a really great moment. You saw all the different little winning plays that he did. The scoring was fantastic, but it was all the other stuff too that he locked in and did in game two that really stood out to me. I'm looking at kind of where things are at. I've shared this here on the show. I've talked about it in a couple other spots, but one of my expectations for this team was that as the series progressed, right, they would get more and more comfortable, right? Especially the younger guys, right? Obviously some playoff jitters hit the young guys there in game one. They settled down. They looked more confident, more sure of themselves. They got back to doing some of what led them to be successful in the regular season in game two. Ime talked about it, right? They tried to hunt Steph a little too much in game one, got back to kind of what worked more in the regular season in game two with the screening actions, Alpi in the middle of the floor, Jalen as the primary, all those different things. Kind of what are some of your expectations for game three as things are shifting out to the Bay Area?
I don't think you change the game plan on Steph Curry. Somebody else has to beat you. That group has not shown you that they destroy the double teams on Steph. Klay Thompson ain't walking through that door, guys. Okay, he's he's shaking his head, not wanting people to ask him, those questions. So you can't over exaggerate. They did a much better job of being up. And at times, Steph had 5 or 6 turnovers. He got frustrated with Houston jumping out, and you have to stay disciplined. Know that you got to stay disciplined, and knowing that building, they run a little bit faster. There was one or two slip ups and he hit a three right away. So Alp's got to have his head on the swivel. Like you're almost running back, going, where's Curry? You're locating him, and this is with all due respect, this is ain't no due respect. This is an easier Golden State team that you can guard versus in the past, but you would not help. Or if you double team Curry the way the Rockets are doing now, those would be threes on the weak side. You couldn't blitz him. You just Alp wouldn't be on the floor. He would have to go guard him. Like, Kevin Love, remember that possession Kevin Love kind of guarded Curry? He would have to be getting his Kevin Love impression on the island, But stay with the same game plan with Curry. I'm going to really need a lot from Amin Thompson. Not that Amin Thompson needs to score, but Amin needs to be Amin. And the reason we love Amin, he plays underneath the defense. He gets the 50-50 balls. He crashes in there. I don't even care about his foul trouble from the last game because he brings that physicality. And you got Tari and Jabari who can run right back in. And look for Dillon Brooks, man. Don't be surprised if Dillon Brooks has one of those, multi three-pointer type of games and just brings it because he's the guy, and this is why you love Dillon. And we've seen it this season, Jackson. Something about, I don't know how the dude is wired. When you're in those high pressure, the villain, you're the spoiler. Yeah, like he puts that S on his chest, like he turns it. It's something different. So Dillon Brooks, man, he's a guy that I'm looking forward to go off. And my focus is to see, all right, let's continue to simplify for LP, continue to hit the boards, and like I'm not taking it for granted that he's gonna have a good game three. I'm gonna spoon feed him layups. I'm gonna make sure he's locked in defensively. I'm gonna try to get him on rim runs and seals and drive hard, draw his man, and then dish so that he can get going because this is going to be a different environment. There's going to be a different environment. And for Tari Eason, trust those threes, trust that spacing, but be willing to adjust and know that they're going to be on one. Jimmy Butler, don't think for one damn second like that's going to affect him. He might not. Jackson, can I say this on the show? He might not feel his butt cheeks, okay? They're going to be as numb. With all due respect, I don't want to offend. They might just be as numb as you can imagine. When you listen, hey, man, let me tell you something, okay? You ain't going to be able to feel nothing. Jimmy going to feel great, okay? He ain't going to feel nothing on the court. Jimmy's gonna be just fine. There's ways around that. They said no structural damage. Jimmy's gonna be just fine. So you imagine seeing the best version of Jimmy.
They're gonna numb him up and send him right out there and say, "Go to war." Oh man, that is hilarious.
That's what it is. That's why he's there. That's why he got extended.
Ryan, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my guy. Great insight, great analysis as usual. You are a gem on the broadcast, a treasure to Rockets fans everywhere. We appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. We do want your thoughts, your expectations in the YouTube comments. What are you looking for in Game 3 from the Houston Rockets? Ryan, always a pleasure to have you on. Parting thoughts, final words before we get you out of here?
Man, selfishly, I want this so bad for these guys.
Yeah,
we gotta keep our composure. I swear, like on the broadcast, like there's moments if you just hear a lot of silence from me, sometimes I'm just containing myself, and it's important even for myself, broadcasting or calling a game. Like my job is to make sure that we showcase how amazing those kids are, and our guys are, and the coaching staff and the work and the front office that they put on. So there's moments you're going to hear us lay out and see that they have their moment, that they beat their chest, that they appreciate it. You guys deserve it for sticking in here, supporting. There's none of this without y'all from watching. And man, let's go to war for our guys. Shoot out the tweets, go to war with those Golden State fans, get in them comment sections, flood, show our guys love, on their page, show love on the Rockets page. Spam it, man. Spam it. Show love, show Craig love, Vanessa love, Space City, right? Everybody, like, we got to show out. What's beautiful is that Houston the Rockets are a world brand. Space City, bro. We all the way out to space, okay? We're a world brand. So wherever you coming from, where's Paulo at, man? Paulo watching the game at like 2 in the morning, bro. Like, right? Like as a world brand, like we gotta unite. Like you like go ahead and wake the neighbors up, all right? Let them hear your noise. But we're ecstatic. Enjoy it, man. And it's just it's a privilege to be in the mix, man. And for us, this is, at least to date from a regional standpoint, our last playoffs, man. So let's make it a special one. Our last one in the sense of though the national will own the rights, So if we do, it will be under something else. But for us, man, this is special.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also, check out our Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.